Chapter 38. The Pink Coconuts. Now, for the vast majority of you, that name will mean nothing to you. Diddly squat. However, for a large number of people of a certain age living throughout the UK in places such as the Midlands, the North, and a smaller number of people who lives in the South East, the name Pink Coconuts will invoke some very happy and fond memories. And just like the last section, the days of feathers, the days of pink coconuts were some of the best times of my life. Between 1993 to the middle of 1994, the lads and me were partying on the South Coast. Anyone who was partying in Bournemouth back then would remember the Zoo Bar and the Venue. But then the lads heard the gossip of a place that was in the opposite direction, where the fish in the sea was plentiful and happy to be caught. The location was the city of Derby in Derbyshire. The venue, the Pink Coconuts. So we put together a small platoon for a reconnaissance mission. Danny's red Ford Fiesta was selected for the maiden journey across the great pathway called the M1. I was selected for the driving seat due to my zero consumption of alcohol, while Danny and schoolmate Eddie were the passengers. The in-drive entertainment were a supply of alcohol and cigarettes, along with tape cassettes filled with the thumping funky beats of the late great DJ known as Paul Trouble Anderson, along with some funky beats from our then favourite pirate radio station, Girls FM, also giving a shout out for all of those who was also tuning in at the time. Now we were all set. We were on our way. 1 hour, 40 minutes later, we were coming off junction 25, heading into Derby city centre. The first thing that stood out to us when we entered the city centre was just how lively the place was. The best way I can describe it to anyone who wasn't there, if you've been to the Mediterranean party islands such as Cyprus, Ayia Napa, Magaluf, Tenerife, Ibiza, you will get an idea of what we were witnessing. The place was heaving and absolutely buzzing with lots of people bar hopping. So eventually we reached our destination. We got to the famous Pink Coconuts for the first time. There was a little bit of a queue if you're in America, a bit of a line outside. Didn't take that long to get in. So once we was in, that's when our eyes really opened. Now, being heterosexual men, I can't help but describe it from a man's point of view. So I do apologize for any offense caused, but I have no other way of describing it. We had a bit of a culture shock because we wasn't really used to seeing so many women in one place. Back in the early to mid-90s, the statistics was, especially for in the neighbouring city just 10 miles away, Nottingham, but in that area in general, the women outnumbered the men something like 3-1. And this was something quite alien to us because in London, it was really the other way around. Men outnumbered the women. Hence why in London, back in those days, there was lots of female incentive like women free before 10, etc. So just to get the women into the places because of the numbers imbalance. And another thing that blew us away, because we were in an environment that we were outnumbered by the women, we noticed the attention was more than what we're used to getting. We found ourselves getting eyed up in ways that we simply just wasn't used to, definitely not in London. Now, we've always known that people in the Midlands and the North are friendlier than London people anyway. That's no new news. But we couldn't help notice just how much more friendlier the women were up there compared to London. I'm sorry to keep knocking London, but I will come to the explanation with London shortly. Now, I believe it was Nathan's friends that went to Pink Coconut before us. So it was Nathan that told us about the Pink Coconut. So when we got back and we gave our reports, all we kept on saying was, man, Nathan was right. He was so right. The place was full of skirt. And to top it off, the three of us was fairly lucky. I mean, we didn't get laid or anything like that, but we all met someone. So you could imagine, once we arranged a second trip and we invited all the lads along, which was 2 cars, sometimes it was as much as 3 cars, but most of the time it was 2 carfuls. Then the pink coconuts started to become a bit of a regular jaunt, as in every other 2 weeks. Now, the difference between my lads and my flatmate Nathan's group of friends, they had like expensive, fast sports cars. So they had the thrill of boy racing. So they purposely left London fairly late. I don't know, but they always left London around 8:30, 9 o'clock to get down there. Whereas we liked going to the bars beforehand. So we would leave around 4, 5 o'clock. Because we discovered that there was more to the city of Derby than pink coconuts. There was a place called Saddle Row. I may have pronounced it wrong, but it was a narrow road or a narrow street, pedestrian street, full of bars. And we were just going in and out of different bars and clubs along there. We had a whale of a time in that place. And then there was another place called the Bentley Bar. Oh, I've had some fun from that place as well. And then there was a bar right smack next to the Pink Coconuts. We used to go there a lot beforehand. So there was a lot of pre-partying before the main event. So that's why we used to leave so early. And we just ended up meeting so many people, not just women, but we made a lot of friends in general. But it was just a joy to go there every single time. And when we used to get to the Junction 25, we would give out a loud cheer because we knew all of us was in for a hell of a good time. The Pink Coconut was divided into 2 rooms. You had the big room, which was mostly mainstream music, and you had the smaller room, which was a bit more of a connoisseur room, but the music they tend to play in the smaller room was more on the R&B, light hip-hop, and a splash of reggae. Now, the atmosphere in the smaller room was more serious than the bigger room, but still, compared to what we were used to down in London, the smaller room, even though it was more of a serious atmosphere, it was still very friendly and merry. The bigger room, the mainstream room, was really crazy. It was really party-wise. Now, as promised, the explanation to why the women were friendlier up there than they were in London. I shall describe it in plus and minus. Okay, I'll start off with London. The plus of London, it's a big place, 8.5 million people lives there, lots of tourists, lots of choice of places to go, diversity of bars, diversity of food, diversity of people. Now, the minus with London, because it attracts people from all over the world, there are some people from parts of the world that are not used to male and female mixing, i.e. guys who come from parts of the Middle East, parts of Africa, and even parts of Europe, if it's kind of very Islamic or something like that, for example. So as a result, there's a few of them that don't know how to conduct themselves around women. So, for example, they lack the social skills in making eye contact or smiling and having a conversation. So they would maybe grab a woman in the wrong place, the wrong part, or just grab a woman, which is wrong anyway. Or they would just approach her in a hostile manner because they haven't got the skills and the know-how to approach women with finesse. So as a result, the women obviously have to have their guards up. They have to be on the defense because they are the one who's been pursued. They are in danger. And sadly, because of the sheer size of London, there's more of those creeps in London than there are up in the north. So the women have to be on their fence, on their guard a whole lot more than the women up in the Midlands and the north. So now we come to the Midlands stroke north. Okay, so the plus, smaller place, people tend to know each other more, so they tend to be friendlier, tend to be much more of a community spirit. The plus side for a man's point of view, because the women outnumber the men, the competition amongst women is a lot higher. So they tend to be they're more overt in terms of catching a man. So they're not going to put up as much defense in terms of you talking to them, because one, they don't have the problems of the London women who have to worry about the creeps and the guys who won't take no for an answer. Correction. The women in the Midlands up north had to deal with less creeps than their London counterparts. In short, the men in the Midlands and the north tend to be better behaved than some of the men down in London. So that would make them more friendlier. Now for the minus, because the place is smaller, such as Derby city centre, there's more chance of you being recognised. So if you fall out with a woman really badly and she wants to make your name shit, it's very easy for your face to be recognised and you be attached to the shit that she laid on you. Now, the best way I can give you a mental image of the size difference between London and Derby. Derby city centre is very similar to downtown Ealing. Ealing is just one of 32 boroughs in London. You get the idea now. So in short, Derby city centre, or Derby, is more or less the equivalent of one or maybe two of London's boroughs. So if you were to have a misfortunate fallout with a woman in West London, well, you could easily go to South London and no one would know who the hell you are. Same with East London or North London or West End, the middle of London. It's a complete different place, different city altogether. Whereas Derby or Nottingham or any other cities in that region, it's more or less like being in Ealing. You piss somebody off in Ealing, it won't take very long for you to cross paths with them. Now, this is going to sound really insane, but it will make sense when I explain it. The positive experiences that we had from Pink Coconuts in Derby had a negative effect on us back in London. Where we had been spoilt by the warm welcome from the women, it made us very reluctant to approach women back in London. At the time, a popular nightclub in Ealing, the Broadway Boulevard, had a funky boogie night on a Sunday night. So obviously, us being up in the Pink Coconuts on a Saturday night, then going to the Broadway Boulevard on a Sunday, it was a bit of an anticlimax for us because we found the vibe from the women was cold and unwelcoming. Really, they wasn't, but just compared to the women in the Midlands, they just appear to be cold and unwelcoming. So for the guys who was just restricted to London, they didn't know any better. So it was okay for them. But for us, it really was an anticlimax. And as I said before, I don't say this to piss anyone off or make anybody feel bad. It's just what we had gotten used to and we became spoilt. So despite enjoying a good boogie down at the Broadway Boulevard, when it came to the women's side of things, we felt that we knew better without being cruel. That when you're being spoilt with women eyeing you up, smiling at you, coming up to you and dancing with you, and you could also have a no strings attached conversation with a woman up in the Midlands. It didn't have to be a case that just because you're talking to her, that she's going to assume that you want to get into her pants. It was so much freer. Whereas in London, you just felt that, well, even if you smiled at a woman, she's under the impression that, she thinks that you want to have her babies. I know that's not how it really was, but that's how it seemed. So now I've come to the end of the Pink Coconuts introduction. The next set of chapters to follow will be my adventures on my journey on the dating scene in that part of the world.